Well, let's get straight down to business. It's time to meet the odds-on favourite to be Ireland's next Taoiseach. And for the last number of days, we've asked you to send your questions or identify issues that are important to you. So we'll get through as many of them as we can this morning. We'll first, though, look at the party's key policy document, Working for Our Future, which was published yesterday. Fine Gael leader Enda Kenny, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Will, and good morning to your listeners.
Now, in your foreword to this document, you say fiscal austerity to pay for massive bank bailouts has not restored confidence and employment in the Irish economy. So why then do you propose to continue with bank bailouts and financial austerity?
Well, you have to deal with the reality as you find it on the ground. My view was that this was let run out of control by a government that had lost its competence to actually deal with the affairs of the country. You're faced with this crushing burden on the Irish worker for the next generation. In my view, this shouldn't have happened had you had supervision of the Regulation Central Bank and the Department of Finance. But that didn't happen.
Granted, there's no argument there, but the question is what happens in future. And
correct.
You're going to take, over the next 3 years, €6 billion out of public spending, which is financial austerity, is it not?
You have to take more than that out. We've set out the...
That's in spending.
We've agreed
the rest
here,
is tax.
Yeah, we've agreed here with the programme and the plan set out in respect of rectifying our national finances to get that debt down to 3% by 2014-2015. We've also accepted that we will not change the 12.5% corporation tax rate, which Irish people voted as an inherent part of the Lisbon Treaty.
Granted, but you're still evading my opening question.
No,
You've said in your foreword that fiscal austerity to pay for massive bank bailouts has not restored confidence and employment in the Irish economy, and yet you propose to continue to do just that.
We're going to change the way politics and business is run in this country to rectify this problem on behalf of the people.
Through continued financial austerity.
We set out a 5-point plan which deals with the reality of what you can do given the constraints that are on the country as a consequence of the IMF-EU deal, which was a bad deal negotiated by the government. Now, I recognise that when the IMF came here, despite the fact that the government didn't tell the people the truth, we now know the truth of the scale of the financial challenge facing the next government. So what are we going to do?
I will keep coming back to this question persistently, Deputy
I'm going to
Kenny.
answer it for you. I'm going to answer it for you.
Fine
Gael set out our 5-point plan. This is designed,
which includes fiscal austerity, which in your foreword you say has not worked, and yet you're continuing with it. Why?
This deals with the reality of the consequence for you and the people of Laois Offaly. Unemployment, distressed mortgages, emigration, no hope, no encouragement from the current structures.
It's clear you don't want to answer the question, which is your privilege. That's fine.
We have to.
Why then?
Sorry, no. You're making a charge that we want to continue with fiscal austerity.
Yes,
that's a reality. We have to deal with the pain that's up front.
Okay, but in your foreword to your key documents yesterday, you have said fiscal austerity to pay for massive bank bailouts has not restored confidence and employment in the Irish economy, and yet you propose to continue with it.
We're asking the people for their trust and their vote to give us the opportunity to change the way business and politics operates in this country.
Okay.
You can't get away from the fact, Will, you can't get away from this fact that if we're going to sort out our fiscal problems, we have to deal with that austerity reality.
That's not the issue. The issue is you're saying it's not working in your forward, and then your plan continues to pursue it.
If you want to explain to you how we propose to go about that, I will.
Okay, but
you seem to be
point
focusing on two words, fiscal austerity.
I'm focusing on the first question, which you still have not answered.
This crisis is not going to go away, and I'm telling you, if we get the votes and the confidence of the people, how we propose to deal with it, but the people are the judges. There is no easy way ahead. Mark my words.
Okay.
There is no magic wand here.
Your party was telling people in November and December, that you favoured a ratio of 3-1 to make this adjustment, cuts to taxes. Now that's more like 2-1. So what has changed?
It's not 2-1. We set out a 4-year plan prior to the budget. The government brought in its budget. Its tax figures are obviously different than what was projected. So our ratio changes from 78 to 22.
From 78 to 22. Can you explain that?
It means that for 78% will be in respect of cuts and savings, and 22% is in respect of tax.
But what changed in the budget? Because your document about perspectives on the 4-year plan suggested that you wanted a tax adjustment in 2011 of just under a quarter, which is exactly what happened.
Well, we set out the tax revenues, if you check them in respect of what has come in from the budget, has changed these circumstances. If you're making
so you got your numbers wrong.
Well, nobody is in a position, with greatest of respect to the economists and to everybody else, to determine what the actual figures will be as you move through the middle of the year or towards the end of the year. We've had all of the figures from the Minister for Finance with all his people, and they were all wrong. We were to have NAMAs providing a wall of cash and credit for business.
Granted, again, that's not an argument, but your numbers also were wrong.
I'm telling you the truth here, and it is very important that you know the truth, that the plan that we set out prior to the budget, a 4-year plan, was based on a 3-to-1. The figures arising from tax revenues in respect of the budget put through before Christmas have changed those circumstances. Fine Gael will launch its detailed fiscal plan next week, and that will be based on a ratio of 78% to 22.
Okay. The Memorandum of Understanding with the EU requires that in December, this country, this state, whichever government is in charge, will raise €1.5 billion in taxes, which is actually more than in 2011. How are you going to do that?
Well, we're not going to increase income tax. We've set that out.
Right.
Our programme
What about the tax bands?
We're not changing the tax bands either. And we're the one party that have said that, because we recognise that you cannot tax your way back to prosperity. You cannot tax your way out of a fiscal crisis that has been left on top of us now.
So let me ask the question in an unequivocal way. When somebody looks at their pay packet now and looks at their pay packet in 12 months' time, it will be exactly the same.
If you'd like me to answer the question for you, I will. Fine Gael will not increase income tax. Fine Gael will not change the bands of income tax.
Right. I'm trying to establish will there be any other means of indirect taxation. So the question is, when we look at our pay packets 12 months from now, as opposed to today, will they be the same?
Fine Gael will not change the rates of income tax. Fine Gael will not increase income tax. Fine Gael will not change the bands of income tax. And Fine Gael will not introduce direct taxes on employment. Is that clear?
Is that a yes to the question then?
Is that clear?
Is that a yes to the question? When we look at our pay packets, the state will not be taking any extra out of the penalties at present.
Fine Gael will not increase income tax and will not change the bands. I think that's perfectly clear. Is there anything about that that we don't understand?
The question was a yes or no question. But anyway, I'll take that as a yes and we'll hold you to it.
Fine Gael, well, you can. And Fine Gael have already said we would introduce water rates after meters are installed, after an allowance is given to people, and then you pay a charge for the use of that water. So in respect of taxes on employment, which is why I'm in Laois Offaly today, we recognise that jobs and employment and the opportunity to have work is central to rectifying this economy. Our exports are doing
on that point,
well. Your indigenous employment,
your document makes
we
reference
have failed
to three
utterly to remove the tax obstacles and the burdens of red tape on employers.
Your document yesterday makes reference to 3 policy areas when it comes to addressing unemployment, and one of them is that you have displaced sectors such as construction. So there are plasterers, there are welders, carpenters and so on, listening today, who are displaced.
Yes.
And your document says that they will find it very difficult to get work in this growing export sector. Now, what exactly are you doing to address that?
Well, thank you for coming around to the central issue of our 5-point plan.